Ugh, this phone drives me crazy.
Excuse me, I'm the Sprint intern from Sprint. Try my new iPhone XR with an amazing liquid retina display.
This is amazing. Mind if I snap a few photos? Look at that color. I love this display.
I'm gonna need that back.
Switch to Sprint and get iPhone XR 64 gigabytes for $0 per month with an eligible trade-in and a Sprint Flex lease. Visit a Sprint store, sprint.com/iPhone, or call 1-800-SPRINT1.
Phone $0 per month for 18 months after $31.25 per month. Credit applied within 2 bills. If cancel early, remaining balance due. Excludes tax. Subject to credit. $30 activation fee. Coverage and offer not everywhere. Restrictions apply.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Aquarian Radio at aquarianradio.com. I'm your host, Janet Kira Lessin, with my co-host, Karen Christine Patrick, and we are doing an episode today of Planetary SOULutions with Ruthann Amarteifio, and Karen's going to be telling us a little bit about Ruthann, and the show is also, subtitle is My Big, B.I.G, change, and Karen is going to tell you what that means. So, welcome, Karen, to the show.
Hello.
Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi. Would you like to explain a little bit about who Ruthann is and what brings her to the show today and what this basic income guarantee big change is that's about to change our world? Take it away, Karen.
Yeah, this is a really interesting evening for me, really fun, because I'm talking about a topic that I started to talk about on a show before I joined Aquarian Radio with Ruthann Amarteifio. She's an amazing host on Blog Talk Radio talking about all kinds of topics. We had a show together with some other people called The Dialogue, and we just kind of talked about our lives and how we viewed it in terms of economic issues, and it kind of meandered through permaculture ideas and the future of money. And then we got towards the end there really digging into this topic of the basic income guarantee. And subsequent to the time that I was with Ruthann, I continued to study the topic. I have a blog. I wrote some articles about it, and also discovered the movement. There's a movement on this basic income guarantee thing. But first I want everyone to know my great friend. I always love my wise women when I can find them, and I keep them close. And that's Janet, Kira Lessin, and Ruthann Amarteifio. Ruthann, welcome to Aquarian Radio.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. This is, I love working with women, and I don't seem to be able to do that enough. So this is very, very good.
Yes, thank you. And if you can tell us more about who you are and your background and how you got started doing radio programs. I know you're doing some other topics as well, but you and I were on that kind of open-ended The Dialogue program. But go ahead.
Yes, we were. I've been in the pagan world knowingly for almost 3 decades now, and it was because of that several years ago my adopted brother, Casey Caraher, and I started a blog talk show called Akasha Temple Live, because our temple is called Akasha. And so that was the way we got into the radio. I mean, I had just always been fascinated by it, but Casey actually went to school for it. And so it was like, oh, well, this could be fun. And we did enjoy it. We were doing like 2 nights a week for quite a while, and then just, life was getting in the way, so we got down to 1. And then I started my own radio station, and now we aren't doing Akasha Temple Live anymore, but Casey is a guest on some of my shows, so he's still on the radio. And he's going to be getting his own station again, I think, pretty soon. But there's so many things in the world, and once your mind and eyes are open, I don't know how anyone can not get involved in some way. And for me, radio has just been a wonderful tool to reach out and meet people around the world and to talk with so many interesting people that I wouldn't, just in regular walking the dog, going to the market life, ever have had a chance to do. So I owe a great deal to Blog Talk in particular. A lot of people don't like Blog Talk because of various reasons, but I think it has just been a great, great tool. I'm very grateful for it. I mean, Karen, I wouldn't have met you otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't have met Janet. We wouldn't be talking right now.
Yeah.
And I love technology. I know some people complain about technology, and it's like I grew up with it. I was in my first computer class in high school, and then I took computer science in college, and I realized I didn't want to program exactly, but I thought the use of the computer was interesting, and it has just developed with this social media stuff to where, the kinds of things I like to talk about, it's very hard to find anyone else, and I know lots of people say this to me, anyone else in their social circles or their family or their community that have the same oddball interests.
Exactly. And for us, they're not oddball, but they are for those people. And you're right. There is, it would just be like where I live and the people good people that they are, that I have around me, in a way, it's just a desert for me, for the things that are near and dear to me. And so social media has really, really done me a great favor.
Well, I was on with you for a while, and I really appreciated it. And then I connected with Janet. I had actually interviewed Janet on another Blog Talk show before that. I ended up working with Aquarian Radio. So I keep coming back, and I keep meeting great people. And then I interviewed Janet and her husband, Sasha, and then now I'm working with Aquarian Radio. And when we talked about a series called Planetary SOULutions, solutions for the planet that come from our soul and our hearts, I thought of you, and I thought of our great conversations about the basic income guarantee, because it was just kind of coming to at least my consciousness right about when you and I were having those conversations. And Janet and I have also had another program or two about the basic income. But what I wanted to do was kind of, if anybody's had updates or what I've learned since I talked to you. And then I learned from our guest, Leonie Gale, who was on with us. She talked about how they set up a table at an event, and they literally asked people, if they gave them a piece of paper and a pen, if you had an extra, well, they, the sort of the running number everyone says is $1,000 a month per adult and maybe $500 per, older teenager. How would that change your life or the lives of people around you, where you didn't have to worry about it? It was coming in every month. How would that change your life? So what I thought we could do is I would just kind of reintroduce the topic of what a basic income guarantee is, and we could just explore, I've now talked to both of you about why that's an important idea to talk about right now with the economy just stagnant, pretty much. It's not restarting, and it's a hardship, even more so than, as time every year goes by, there's more hardship for people. So the basic, and I'll just go ahead and make that introduction, if that's okay with you guys, and then we'll round table it. The basic income guarantee was an idea. It's not it's not a new idea. It's actually an old idea. It was proposed as far back as the 1800s with a citizens' dividend. So as the country was prosperous, and they have such a thing in Alaska, if they have a good year for their total economy, they give a dividend to their citizens, and it varies year by year. But the idea is to give people, instead of having all of these benefits programs that we have, is to just simply give a dividend to each citizen to spend how they wish, and then they could use it on their basic needs. The idea is they wouldn't have to worry about money for housing if they lost their job, or for food. They wouldn't necessarily have food stamps. They'd have money to go buy the food they want. They could get organic veggies. And then they would just be something they could count on, so they could maybe finance a car to get to if they want to work, to get to a job. If they want to volunteer, they can volunteer. I mean, we would be changing, like, how we would spend our energy if we knew we were supported in that way. And so that's the basic idea. It's been supported by Martin Luther King, believe it or not, in his last book that he wrote before he was killed. He suggested not only a basic income, but a respectable one, like where you had a median income and you weren't just locked into poverty. It was supported on, and that would be, I guess, the left side of the support aisle. And the right side of the support aisle, it was supported by Milton Friedman, who was the economist under the Reagan administration, chief economist. And he spelt it out as a negative income tax. So if your income dropped below a certain point, you'd get money instead of have to pay money. So it would basically abolish poverty, because we'd have it at the poverty line. There wouldn't be any below that unless they were just temporarily, disenfranchised in some way, and they could be put on the basic income, maybe like these refugee kinds of people that are coming. So that's the basic premise, and I'll pass the stick. Go ahead, Janet.
Okay. Excuse me. Yeah, it's an interesting concept, and I'm glad we're exploring it. And I've been researching a little bit, and I wish I had more time to get my head and wrap my head around it. Get into it more, because it reflects to me a concept that Alex Collier said on one of his interviews. I think it's back in the 90s, when he said that he interacts with the extraterrestrials and the Andromedans, and so he gave us a scenario, which I love these things because they make you think. And he said that he was invited to go on board ship and explain money to the Andromedans, because they just didn't quite understand it. So he did the equivalent of a PowerPoint presentation, with all the slides, and all the extraterrestrials gathered, and they beamed them up to the ship, and he gave them this exposition on money, and they listened intently. And then after this long presentation, they just, one of the leaders stepped up and said, "Well, I know, it was very interesting, and I still don't understand it, but I have a question. How is it that you have a planet where people who didn't choose to be born are charged to live on it? They're born, and then they have to make money, and they have to struggle, and they didn't understand it." And so they said, "Well, if we come down and show you this whole new social system that we're doing here out in the cosmos, all the different extraterrestrial species, and you still want to do this money stuff, we're going to be supportive of you, but we still don't understand it." So that's my question is, and I've pondered that for 20 years plus years now. It's like, how is it that we are charging people who didn't ask to be born here to just live, and we have this whole work-based economy? So I've been getting what Karen and I call downloads on other social systems, discussing it online with various people like Andrew Bashago and Albert Weber, and then Karen came along, and we've been, bouncing this ball around for years. And I think there are solutions for this, which is the primary problem, because most of the world is in economic slavery, and that just is appalling for me. And I hope it is for other people out there. I know some people, they like to have someone to look their noses down on and feel that they're better than, and hierarchy exists, and that I don't quite understand. The older I get, the less I understand these things. And even as a child of the 50s and 60s, I was a little hippie chick, born to a Republican family, of course, and it's like, I don't get war, I don't get the Vietnam War, I just don't get it. So that I embraced Star Trek, which is another system where they didn't have money. They had credits, and they lived on board ship, and their needs were met. And then, of course, I think it was Deep Space Nine introduced the Ferengi, and they were, money-based extraterrestrials. But they didn't appear to be the norm. They appeared to be kind of outside of the norm. And then for a while there in the late 90s, I got to live on a military installation called Johnson Atoll. And, yes, we made money, but there was no need for it on the island. Basically, you got everything. You got your housing, your food, everything's free. You could go to movies, you could bowl, you could golf, whatever you wanted to do, everything was free. So a lot of people just hoarded their money there for when they got out to the real world, and then they had a couple $100,000 in the bank. And that was one of the enticements for living on a remote location. A lot of civilians worked for the military so they could hoard money for their quote-unquote retirement. So, and then you said, what would I do with, like, let's just say $1,000 extra a month? So I'm married to, we would basically, and we put all our money in the same pot, we'd have $2,000 extra a month. It's really hard to kind of get your head around that because it's like a fantasy. I think I could breathe and relax and not always be, how am I going to pay for this? How am I going to pay for that? I'm in a constant state of angst. I start to catch up. It's like the fish in the toilet bowl, and I start to catch up, and then somebody flushes, and it's like, well, how can I finally do this and that? And I feel like I'm in constant putting out the fire emergency mode right now, especially as I get older, and I'm trying to do more. And that's kind of weird because you think people, when you're getting older, you want to retire, but I feel like my time is running out, and if I'm going to accomplish the goals that I set for myself, and mine are about changing the planet and making it a better place for me and you and the entire human race, to quote Michael Jackson. And I need to do those things, and at this point I need to get out and reach more people. So then, of course, I have things like Blog Talk, like Ruthann had, and Karen's been involved with for years. And, you have all this money that you have to have for internet, for a good phone system. It doesn't seem like your expenses go down. It seems like the more we have technology, the more we need to keep up with the technology in order to do our real work, which is what I'm retired from the other work I did all my life to do my real work, which is what I would have been doing all along had I not been in this social structure where I have to do a quote-unquote real job. So I think I'll pass the ball with that one. I'm not sure if that's what you're looking for, but keep directing us, Karen, and we'll ask it again. We'll fine-tune our answers, but back to you.
No, that's exactly the line of talking and thinking that I'd like to explore. Ruthann, you and I have talked about a lot. What's your latest thoughts on the basic income?
Well, I just I found something. I'm sure that you ladies already know about it. It's at www.usbig.net, and I just recently found it. I want to explore that a little more. They have some good articles, and they're actually having a conference in Canada in May of this year, and I think this is worth looking into because several different organizations, like Karen said, there's a movement now for BIG, and several different organizations are putting this program on. So I'd like to know more about what they are. And you can join. It doesn't cost anything to join. And, others, I want to look at that some more. You were talking about if we had an extra $1,000 a month. And, the funny thing is, because one of my things, always is travel. But something else I was thinking, then, I could give more money to one of my causes that really bothers me on a countrywide is issues here in the United States that we have in, the Dakotas, different Indian reservations, and I'm sure it's not just exclusive to Dakotas, where, U.S. citizens, these are the original people, native people, are starving, they're freezing, they don't have warm places to live, and the federal government, which is supposed to be doing something about this, isn't. And when they do, the government of the tribes is frequently as corrupt as the rest of our government, and so the money doesn't get to where it's supposed to go. So I was thinking, wow, I could help out there. And then I'm thinking, but wait a minute, they're going to be getting $1,000 extra a month too. They should get more because they aren't getting hardly anything now. But it would eliminate a lot of the things that first come to my mind, where I could help out the money. But it's in this country, then everybody would be up to the basic standards. So, hey, then there would be a lot of travel. And like Janet said, equipment doesn't necessarily come inexpensively. And there's several things I would like to do, because I would like to go into YouTube also, but I need more training and equipment. So, there's things, I think so many people would be exploring their creative side, because it's not that people don't have a creative side, but now with families, the average, two-parent family is working 3 jobs to support them. And so, that would not have to be anymore. People could have time. They could spend it with their friends, their family. If they've always wanted to paint, they could afford supplies. I just think it would be marvelous. And there's no reason that it couldn't happen. Like Karen said, Alaska is looked to as, a very good example of this on maybe a different scale than we're talking, but still the people of the state do get money. And I just think this is so important. You were talking, I saw that it went back, and it was called, I believe, Social Dividend, but it went back to Thomas Paine in 1795. He wrote about it in the Agrarian Justice book, and it was called Social Dividend before 1986. That's when the basic income phrase came into being. But you also mentioned the left and right wingers, because on both sides of the aisle, there's been people who support this. And it's sort of funny because from what I could gather, people on the left, they mean for it to be in addition to, different social services. On the right, they mean instead of. And we would still have to have certain social services that we have now, fire departments, things like this. But if you are assured that your health care is taken care of, your housing, your education, all of these things, it sort of boggles the mind. What would we do if these things are taken care of and we have extra money? Now, this is all before we go to a moneyless society, right? So
right.
There's so many things to think about on this topic. It's amazing. But as I understand it, the United States and Canada, we aren't the only people who are interested in this. It seems to be like there's movements around the world. People are saying, hey, this could work. So let me ask you ladies, when do you think that it's going to begin to work in a larger scale than like Alaska?
I'd like to address that because I actually...
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah,
okay?
Karen, we can't hear you. Let me see what's going on. Hold on.
All right.
Maybe she got mute. There you are. You're back. Are you there?
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Oh, okay, right.
Good.
You can hear me now? Okay, good.
Yes.
Oh, great. Well, okay, so I kind of went pretty in-depth in study after our time together, Ruthann, and I actually made a blog called Caregivers for a basic income guarantee, because I was a caregiver for quite a few family members, but all told at least 20 years I was a caregiver for my daughter full-time. And I explored that. That is an issue, worldwide, is that someone has to take care of someone who's sick or injured, or a family member or whatever, an elderly parent or young children, and that pulls them out of the job market as we know it. I had the experience of interviewing for a job, and I had transitioned my daughter, who's disabled, into a facility, and this woman was asking me how come I had gaps in my work record, and I said, well, I was caregiving quite a bit, and then when she was in school, and I'd had time to do a job, but I did have a spotty work record. There's no question, but that's because I was a caregiver. Like, I was trying to get this lady to understand I wasn't twiddling my thumbs and eating bonbons and watching Captain Kangaroo. I was actually, in between the few part-time jobs I had, I was a full-time caregiver. And this woman, I don't know how she's a woman and doesn't understand this, but she did not understand my spotty work record. And so that's one issue caregivers face, is that they don't have that career path, that's unbroken record of really great jobs that they were really great in, that we all want when we're trying to have a career. So caregivers suffer from some issues that way. And I kind of went through all the things that I went through as a caregiver and realized that a basic income guarantee would have supported me when in the in-between times that when I was taking care of my loved one. And if my loved one was otherwise occupied, then I could go get some schooling or training or something to upgrade my skills, and I would have been supported for the transition from being a caregiver to not being a caregiver, right? So that actually came up. I found all kinds of articles in Europe. In some parts of Europe, they have a stipend for caregivers, and I went, oh my gosh, that's really great. They actually acknowledge that that's a positive thing for society, so they support it. But that's just one group of people that would benefit from the dividend or from the basic income guarantee. And I began to look at all the different things. Different countries do different types of benefits. But I would guess, if I was guessing, the United States might be one of the last places that will get it, because we have such a standoff of belief systems for and against each other just because of different issues. But in Europe, it's catching hold as an idea. In Switzerland, they're going to vote on it this year to do it. In Finland, they're going to have a program. They're also exploring a program to do that. There's a town, Utrecht, in I think it's the Netherlands. Don't quote me on that. They're actually trying it as a city, not just a country, but they're trying it as a city to see how it would work. And then I agree with you, Ruthann, you probably still would have to have some social services, for instance, for disabled people that might not know how to manage their finances very well. They might need some help. Or elderly people. But generally speaking, we would reduce our social services. And that might be kind of scary to some people, but on the other hand, we have a situation where we've got lots and lots of people who can't get work because the economy is not in a good shape. These are hardworking people. They're intelligent people. They used to manage their finances just fine, and they're sitting in offices asking for money and food stamps right now because they can't get a job. If you gave them the finances, they would be very responsible. They would take care of their families and do something positive if given half a chance, because they were hardworking people at one time. One of the things against the idea of the basic income is people would be lazy, or it would be the perfect dream for any drug addicts out there that just don't want to work and just want to take their drugs. But I just don't believe that's the majority of people. My motto is humans get up and do stuff. And generally speaking, given a chance, they do positive stuff. So I would say
most people want to work, or they want to contribute.
Yes,
they really do. And I saw that there was a study that said that the only people who would work less if there was some kind of money given were, now this was in Manitoba in the 70s, but they said were new mothers.
Yes.
And, who wanted to be with their babies, so they might not go back to work soon or get a job. And teenagers who were getting their schooling, high school and college. Because, now with the cost of education, a lot of people can't go to college. Their parents can no longer pay for it. And they have to work to get there. So they might not work as much if they were getting a basic income, which is totally understandable. But I think most people would work, and people might not do as much time. We're going to so much technology now that they won't have to, but they would put some time in, but then they would have the time for themselves also. I cannot see a downside to this except for the multinational corporations that own the governments, the elites. But other than that, there's no downside.
Yeah.
I think that people would still work because they do want to contribute. They need something to do. Not everybody wants to sit there and do nothing. So they would probably work would be, what they do. Whatever they do now, they'll do more. Maybe they go on social networks and they contribute content. Facebook is creative with what people are putting out there. So a lot of people are going into their creativity. People like luxuries. They're not going to just be happy with, they might get a bedroom, but they're still going to want to have, a fancy car or a bigger house or whatever, which they won't be able to get with just $1,000 a month, right? So they're going to work for luxuries. They're going to work to go out on vacations and travel. You're still going to have to work with $1,000 extra. Well, how did I get the first $1,000, right? I'm working. I don't think I'm likely, with how I have established my lifestyle for the last 40 years, be able to go back with a small income and still get all my luxuries, which I like to travel. So I'll have to work so I can afford to go to, the conferences and go to Europe. It'll make things easier. It won't be such a panicky type system that I have now, where when the roof leaks, I don't know what to do, right? It'll help. But even that won't be sufficient to fix a leaky roof, which is going to be $10,000. So I'm going to have to save or go do some additional work to maintain this house, which I own theoretically, but sometimes I feel like it owns me. Back to someone else.
Well, and I would like to add that when this happens, I think that we're also going to see a lot more worker-owned businesses, and people are going to work harder and be happier when they're working for a business that they are part owner of. Yeah. So we're going to be getting rid of some of these major corporations, and that can only be a plus also. So there again,
there's not a downside except to those guys, right?
Yeah, I'm not really worried about those people because they have gotten what they have on the backs of the wage slaves.
Yes, by the numbers. Yeah, studying the economics, one of the things when you study the basic income guarantee, you study what's been going on with our economies, why aren't there jobs? And there's a whole bunch of factors that go into it. I think one of the reasons why we are looking at Thomas Paine back in the 1700s writing about this is because we're right at the beginning of the agrarian culture becoming the industrial age. That actually got rid of a lot of people having to work on farms, family farms and otherwise, plantation kind of farms. So that was like the first jobs reduction or jobs change that we had, was going from agrarian to the city, state, modern industrial factory thing. And we did that for a bunch of centuries and we still have that, except that's changed globally through the multinational corporations who really, they go move their factory to a country where there's not good protections through the union, and they can pay people pennies on the dollar. Yeah. And I would love it when those people get a basic income guarantee because they're in worse shape than any average American, pretty much. We're actually getting to that point. We have parts of our population now that are like a third world country and very deprived, and we have American refugees as well. But the other, then we went into the industrial, or we went into the computer age, right, the information age, and that got rid of, that's causing a job loss. And one of the groups of people interested in the basic income guarantee is people who potentially can have a technology job loss. So as we have Uber, and that's gotten rid of like taxi driving, and then we've had trucks that are going to be self-driving. Oh my gosh.
Yes,
self-driving trucks and robotics, applied robotics. Suddenly, we're going to see a job that's kind of it's not a great job, it's hard working, but it's good pay kind of job. We're going to see, we've already seen in anything related to the information age, so one of the things social media did is we are our own entertainment. we don't necessarily need the newspaper to entertain us because we go on Facebook and see what our friends are up to, right? So that I was in Olympia, Washington, watching the incredibly shrinking newspaper, the Olympian, the state capital newspaper, got thinner, and then it got physically skinnier by 4 inches, and then they had to make the comics page super thick paper so that the thin little paper wouldn't squash down in the box when you had to try to buy it out of one of the boxes with your quarters.
Oh, my goodness.
I know, it was really kind of watching a historical paper do that, and so but what are we all doing? Everyone's got their iPad and their phone, and they're reading things online. So there's another industry impacted by technology job loss, and that could be a good thing. And I'll tell you why. My great-grandfather was an inventor. He wanted to invent things to make things safer for people. They didn't have to work as hard and safer. But he didn't intend it for the corporations to have the technology invention dividend. He meant it for a dividend and for the people. And that's the problem, is all the inventions get given to the corporations. They get the benefit from it. For instance, if we have in Texas, I drove through the area where they have these giant windmills, and they're, once you've, put the windmill up and you've expensed it, then you got basically free energy coming from the wind turning the turbine. Well, I looked at my bill, and in no time in the time I was in Texas, they reduced my bill because they now have these windmill farms. They still kept the price up. Okay, they didn't give me the benefit. They got the benefit. So that's another factor, is a basic income rebalances the dividends that have been going to the corporations all these years. You look by the numbers, their profits and individual wealth has gone up, and everyone else in the world has gone down, and we now have 62 individuals own half the world's wealth. First time.
Isn't that just, it was amazing and dreadful. Yes, 62 people. No. It's not supposed to be that way.
That seems really out of balance.
Yeah.
Really.
But how do you get them to let go of that money? They like having control and the ability to manipulate everybody, so they're not going to let go anytime soon. Where else can we go with this discussion? Did you have some questions, Karen, that you wanted to pose for each of us?
Well, yeah, I don't know how much you want to share personally. I know for me, I've been living on the other end of the from the 62 lucky guys. I've been I'm in what you call, or what I didn't call, this was called by one of the leaders in the basic income guarantee. They called the lower end of the economic spectrum. This man, his name is Guy Standing. He's an economist, and he did a basic income guarantee through in India. They did an experiment in a couple of villages, and he's been writing about this. And he wrote several books. His name's Guy Standing, like the last guy standing is literally how his name is spelled. It's easy to remember. And he wrote The Precariat, A New and Dangerous Class. That's his book. And he put a word on there, precariat, that is juicy. I love this word. It means the people, like how you have the bureaucrat and it's a French or Italian ending, the precariat, meaning these are the people who live precarious lives now because of the economic destabilization and what he calls the gig economy, meaning that you don't have jobs anymore, you have gigs. People who are doing graphic arts, they don't go become a graphic artist in a company somewhere. They do a graphics arts job for, 10 people, and that's how they got paid that week, right? The gig economy. This is really destabilized work as we know it. You don't just get the big job and then you work there for 50 years and then you retire and get the gold watch. That is off the table, okay? What you do is you scramble and you get this contract and that contract, and younger people especially that I know, this is how they work. But they're put in this precariat class because let's suppose they got the flu for 2 weeks. Well, they didn't get paid. They were set back way farther than somebody who got some sick leave. So a lot of our institutions in government and labor and all of that is 50 years behind the times. things have changed drastically in the last 20 years in terms of how work is even done. When I had a business for 20 years doing contract work for with my partner, who's my ex-husband, and we did contract work for high-tech companies after we got out of school. That was our work, was contract work. But the contracts were kind of long. They were like 18 months was a pretty average length. Now it's do this one thing for me, and I'll pay you $300. It's totally the work life has changed considerably. So you're on your toes, you're hungry, you're running off your feet, and your income is uppy downy. It's not something you'd buy a house with or something you'd buy a car with where you got payments. It's too precarious. So it's a precariat. We have a lot of people who are precariat. So pretty much after I was paid a stipend, Medicaid personal care, as a parent-provider program. That was my job, taking care of my daughter, and it was not great pay, but it was a full-time thing. And then I couldn't take care of her on the night shifts, so I hurt my back. So I put my daughter in a facility, and then boom, no job. So I was doing the gig economy stuff, but I was having a harder time with it than before because I needed to upgrade my skills. So I entered that precariat, and I struggled until a miracle happened. I became disabled myself. It sounds terrible. But the fact is I just got my Social Security recently. I now have a basic income guarantee. I'm basically retired as a disabled person. And that's horrible to say, but, compared to being, I have physical disabilities, I can't work the way that I used to. I can't run that fast on that gig economy the way other people do. So
that was so traumatic, though. Any time when you're trying to do a job well for your employer, but you're looking around, casting around to see where your next one is. Yeah. And, the whole hand-to-mouth thing, no one on this planet or any other should be living that type of life.
This is the economy. This is what the jobs are now, though. It's the gig economy now. And that's, to me, the basic income situation would be supporting those people so they could live in a community and be settled and be situated, and then they could get that extra work, but they wouldn't be at DEFCON 5 stress level, which we see people dropping with their, they don't have health care, so they avoid going to the doctor. So I've also been reading about what our economy is doing to people in terms of very young people just dropping dead of heart attacks or committing suicide. The suicide rate with 40 to 50-year-olds is super high because
our friend, my friend, your relative, at 40, he had a stroke. Yes. And I know another man at 39, around the same time, that had a stroke. And it's like, my God. And these are men who, they're not, like, to look at them, you wouldn't think they're unhealthy. They aren't obese by all. They look good, but they had strokes. And that is just unacceptable. Yeah. It is.
Yeah, so there's other quality of life issues that come with what I want to say, jobs. Like, we got this word job, right? It's provision, and I know you and we've all talked about this. It's the idea of your provisions. Your provision with housing, provision with health care, provision with food. It doesn't have to get there by money necessarily, but this is his first idea. And I would think that the basic income guarantee would be like putting out the fire. It would just be a start. Yeah. And then we rethink this whole entire way we do our economy, where we make jobs because we make scarcity. Like we make a job. When I always tell a famous toaster story about the first 10 years of my marriage, I had like 10 toasters or 5 toasters. I don't remember what it was, and my mother-in-law had the one that she bought after World War II that was built like a tank. And she didn't understand why my toasters kept breaking. And I was like, why do my toasters? I'm not any harder on my toaster than she is. I'm not stomping on it or anything. And it was because after a while the companies said, oh, gosh, if we make this stuff too sturdy, it won't break, and then people won't buy more toasters and we'll lose money.
Exactly.
So they put in planned obsolescence in our cars. Everything is
you throw it away. We don't want it anymore. It's broke. We can't fix it, so we'll get another one. The whole idea of that. And that's a false economy.
Well, it is. But, and it's no surprise to people that know me that, I'm a SOCOM, socialist communist, and I look forward to the day when this system is no longer, because we're going to have this for-profit society as long as capitalism is in control, and these 62 people, and on and on. So, when the workers own and control the manufacturing, and not just manufacturing, but we're talking about manufacturing, the toasters, because then you're only wanting to get enough money. You're not looking for this major profit, so you're actually good to the workers, and they take turns doing this and this, and your products are going to be much better again. Because what you're saying about the toasters, that runs for everything. Where I rent, and I have a refrigerator that heaven knows how old it is, and it just works so well. And I know people who have, a refrigerator 5 years in, it's gone. Same with washers and dryers. All of these things, they plan to, I can't say, the word, obsolescence. Like, where is that? It's horrible, but it's now these new ones may look good. See, this is the whole thing, because we're living such a shallow life in ways, because we're programmed to. So they look good, they look flashy, they're sleek and slick, and so someone wants the new one, because you have to keep putting out something to encourage people. And I mean, it's decades old, but still, that scantily clad woman advertising something still gets sales. So, I mean, we have been programmed to just be shallow on these things. But you have mentioned, abundance and living an abundant life, and abundance doesn't necessarily have to do with the money in the bank account. And that was brought home to me the other day when a friend who, makes, 6-7 times what I do, and he is not a happy person. And he made some remark, and I was trying to think of it today, and I couldn't think what it was exactly. And he didn't mean for it to be offensive or anything, but it just had to do with, maybe this or that, so I would have more money. And I told him that, I'm a wealthy person. And I was trying to explain that to him, because, I have friends, I have work I love, I live in a place I love, I have my, four-legged kids, and, my health is great, and I feel so blessed. And so, I feel that I'm surrounded by abundance, and I don't think that he really got it. But it made me think of, remember how people, and they still do it, you meet somebody and they say, what do you do? They don't mean what makes your heart sing. They want to know what you do to get money. And the more money they think you make, the more successful they think you are. And to me, success has nothing to do with money. It's, I think that you're a successful parent when you raise a genuinely compassionate, honest, caring human being. To me, that means you're a successful parent. Not because your kid now is, raking in a few $1 million by walking on other people. But a lot of people disagree with me on the words, I guess, of the meanings for success or abundance.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of people. I know some very wealthy people, and they just, that wealth doesn't equate to happiness. Some of them can't have functional relationships, or they have all this stuff, but once they've achieved it, it's like, well, what else is there, you know? Where do you go when you have everything, right? Nothing left to work for. I was married to a millionaire. My second husband was a millionaire's son, and potential at the end of, you know, Dad dying or whatever happens. Hold on, let me sneeze. Here's somebody talk. Sorry. Okay, there we go. Was that, you know, we had all this money, but, you know, we didn't have it when I was younger. It's just this potential, so I still had to work, and so I started wrapping my head around materialism, and I was going to get this, my perfect house. So we built a house. It was a little split level, and I wanted to decorate it just so, and I remember I wanted this dining room set, and we didn't have the money yet, but I just wanted it, so I put it on layaway, and I worked for like 2 years, and I got the table and the chairs and the china closet and the curio and everything matched. I got the last chair out of layaway, and I brought it home, and I carried it up the steps, and I put it in the dining room, and I wasn't happy. I thought as soon as I accomplished that and everything's done, be happy, I went, wow. And it started me looking at my marriage and how I kind of fallen into that materialistic delusion.
I think it's easy, isn't it? Easy to fall into when you're surrounded by people who think that way.
Mhm. And then I went back to my roots because I was born a poor child of a relatively poor family. We didn't have enough food to eat. My mother would put our food on the plate, and that was it. There was no seconds. You ate what you got, eat it all, no seconds, and it wasn't a lot. I look back and I went, whoa, you know, it wasn't much. But I was very, very happy. And it wasn't about money. It was about interacting with friends and doing things, and I liked being creative, and so I had other things. So when you get away from that materialism, you go back into what's your bliss, where's your joy. It's not always necessarily about money. It might be about writing a song. I used to play my make up songs, play my guitar, and walk around in the neighborhood singing to kids that were, you know, 13 and I was 18, that type of thing. You find your joy elsewhere. Yeah.
I wanted to address what I kind of have in mind on abundance is, of course, quality of life, but the idea that, some of it, we've talked before about free energy, and the first person that kind of everybody kind of looks to is the first person who sort of invented that was Nikola Tesla, and he was financed by a banker. So the banker was like, great, this is new energy, but it's free, and I can't charge for it. This is a conundrum. And so basically they shut Nikola Tesla down, his facility, and, you know, piled up things over it and walked away whistling. Like, I hope nobody else knows about that, because that idea that energy would be abundant to everyone, even to this very day, where even with gas prices down, we're still counting, you know, how much we put in our tank and how much we pay for energy in our home, heating our homes and things. They've kept the idea of energy being precious and scarce and counted with dollars, right? Well, if nobody's been noticing, a big thing that's happened in the last couple of years is an enormous change in our energy paradigm, financial paradigm, that maybe people weren't paying attention to, and they really need to, especially Americans. In the Nixon administration, Kissinger brokered a deal where all oil was paid for by U.S. dollars. Okay, it was called the petrodollar.
Yeah.
And what has happened is this last year, the world said, we're done with that idea, because it is one of the basis of wars, it's the basis of price manipulation, and it's an extra cost to the countries to have to go take their currency, turn it into U.S. dollars, and back and forth just to get the energy that they need. So a coalition of countries with what's called the BRICS alliance, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa,
said, we're done. We're not going to pay with petrodollars anymore. We're going to use our own currency or some other, ideas to pay for the oil. That went through last year, and one of the reasons why our prices have dropped, people, is yay, the prices have dropped. But you need to know why. It's because the world is now not going to be paying for oil with petrodollars. Now, what's really good about that, it does open the opportunity for us to not always be dependent on oil and put research and development into many other energy technologies. Mm-hmm. But I want to reiterate that Nikola Tesla discovered free, F-R-E-E, not paying for any currency, energy. Yeah. So when I'm talking about the abundance economy, I'm talking about that kind of technology coming out because we're no longer, now that we're all provisioned and we've got what we need, we're no longer going to accept that things, that we've been paying for that could be free. We're not going to accept that paradigm. We're going to say, we're going to change our world paradigm to say, making something that breaks is horrible. That's a horrible idea. If you're an inventor, you're a bad inventor if you do that. Making something that doesn't produce over-unity energy and abundance. We would change our entire mindset about what we invent and what we use. Is it renewable, sustainable, etc., for real? Deep investment in that. That becomes the abundant economy. So then, decades, century down the road, we actually don't. What's money? What is that, Grandpa? What was that like? It becomes quaint.
Right. Yeah. But with the abundance society, then you go beyond the whole scarcity because there is none. And that's because we've been programmed to think, well, it's so scarce and we've got to go into this other country and steal their natural resources because we need it. And, that will be done away with. So that's wonderful.
That's a lot of human misery that would go away. And actually we'd start with our basic income, and then as we eliminated things that we had to pay money for, like we learned how to grow stuff for ourselves or have community gardens and quit putting ornamental plants everywhere in your town, put edible plants in your yard. Pretty soon food doesn't become a scarcity as much, so now you're paying less for that. And we kind of reverse what we've got now. Because what we got now is everything's precious. I heard in Europe somewhere that they pay $10 for a head of cauliflower. That could happen here. That could happen here.
It's so wrong. We have let ourselves be. I mean, some people say, well, they've done this to us, but we've allowed it to happen too. And we have to get out of that mindset that we have no power and that the government is going to, do whatever, because we are the people, and people do have power.
Yes, we do. And that's lost on, we're disempowered. We have learned helplessness because this austerity puts us further and further down inside the box. And then, but it is our mindset. We can say, I'm going to push back and learn to do things differently or think of things differently. And that is, well, you and I talked about this, which Ruthann, and I'll share this with Janet. We talked about how you change your consumer mindset to where you don't have to have the latest whatever. You can get one at the thrift store. That's already happening economically. But that's one reason why the economy that people thought of like 8 to 10 years ago isn't going to come back. Oh, when's the economy going to come back? It's not like that. That wasn't sustainable. It didn't work. It didn't work for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, just look around. You see it does not work. So, on to bigger things, not necessarily, bigger in the sense of more helpful, but better things. Yeah, and we can do it. I'm very optimistic. I think we are living in such an exciting time of Earth history that it boggles my mind sometimes.
I have a question. I'll play devil's advocate. How do we get there here? What's the next logical step?
One thing is to talk to other people because we need foundational growth. And, you know, as much as, like I say, I'm in a desert, but I'm talking to people, and a few people actually are very receptive and have been having the same thoughts and really didn't know that there were other people thinking that way. So because, you know, a lot of people are afraid to voice uncommon thoughts. And so, you know, you start building, and with these organizations that are already going, like, get involved. And obviously we're all online. Most people, well, not most people, there's still, like, some of my relatives that aren't online, but most people are either online somewhere, either at home or they have the use of libraries or something, so they can reach out to the bigger outside community.
Mm-hmm.
But we have, see, as long as we don't do these things, we're falling into what the word again, they want. We're divided. And because nothing scares those in charge as much as unified people. And the politicians, the corporations, they're trying to divide us, whether it's by race, religion, now the immigrant situation. They want to keep people divided. And we don't have to fall into that trap.
Mm-hmm. Karen, what do you think? How do we get there from here?
Well, I agree. I think what you and I have learned from the experiencers movement and Ruthann with your political movement is that people don't want to be different and say that to their friends. And I've, you know, as I've talked to both of you guys, and I'm thrilled to have you together because you guys are modeling this for me, is that, you know, I started talking and speaking out, and even on Facebook, and, you know, getting the rejection and the correction and reaction from people that, okay, that's pretty much what I thought you were going to say. Lost some relationships, gain new relationships. You know, when we have all these different people who are like set-aside groups or fringe groups, and we start finding each other and talking to each other, then we learn more and we get bolder about our viewpoint. You know, I really do think that we have a failed economic experiment here in America. You know, I was a very patriotic, raised, you know, Republican, patriotic, conservative person, and over time, especially dealing with the medical system and the healthcare system, with my daughter and everything, and the welfare system, I really had my eyes opened as to, you know, and I dealt with other groups like homeless advocacy, and I went to domestic violence stuff. So I had all these different groups that are kind of marginalized by our society, and realized that any of us could be disempowered at any time by life circumstances. But it doesn't have to stay that way. It's a societal decision that is a group that's on the fringe or disenfranchised. Well, we've seen over and over and over where those disenfranchised people start talking to each other first, more and more and more. Now that the Internet, you can really get specific issues where people can talk about them, and then turn around, get themselves educated, and then you get really bold. And then pretty soon you're talking to somebody and they give you the same old tired arguments you either used to believe or used to fight, and you've got new information that they've never heard before. Right. And I love it when I have that conversation and that person goes, oh, well, I never heard of that before. And basic income's one of them. It's like we've tried the welfare state, and I don't want to pick on people who are really good-hearted people that work in the system, but I put a label on a lot of other people who are just putting their time in. They don't have a good attitude in the system. I call them the deciders. And when you're sitting there, you would rather be working, earning your own money, and buying your food, and you're dealing with one of these people because you have to get food stamps because you don't have a choice, and they're giving you the runaround, or they give you the wrong information, and they just don't care. It's like there's some issues with that system. It's not the normal system that we would normally, as self-empowered people, do. So I've been picking on them. I call them the decider class. And they're people who are trying to solve problems for perfectly willing and able adults who've been disenfranchised. That's a different way of thinking than, oh, those welfare recipients, whatever. Let me tell you, I don't even think that should be a shame thing, because so many places have closed. We've got 200 Walmarts. Everyone has an opinion about Walmart. We have 200 Walmarts being closed right now as we speak in the United States. And that was, these Walmarts moved in, kicked out the mom and pop businesses. All those jobs went away. They hired everybody back at minimum wages. The people that worked at Walmart had to go get food stamps, and yet they were working full time. And now all these 200 Walmarts are leaving all these small towns where they're the only market. Now, I know one of them. I know in Texas, near where I live, there was a small town that I saw that whole process happen when I was living there. And it's like, it can happen to anybody.
Walmart think the mom and pop businesses may come back in?
Well, how could that be? Those people were family businesses that were there for years, and do the grandkids want to pick that up? Do they have the capital to do it? Do you know what I mean?
The capital is important now because, it's not as easy to start a business now as it was.
Yeah, so we have this, it could happen to anybody, companies still moving over to other parts of the world to start businesses because the labor is cheaper over there because they take advantage of their people. So this thing is like a downward spiral that keeps feeding on itself unless we get new ideas and talk to others.
In terms of, the Walmarts are like this whole big image ideas. I'm sitting here in Maui, and they still have little cow towns. They look like the Wild West. And they have both sides, the big business and the little businesses, because it is a tourist industry, which seems to be pretty profitable because people like to come to where it's warm, no matter what. That's one of the things they do. It's like, well, at least I'm going to treat myself to vacation in Hawaii at least once in my lifetime. That's what a lot of people do. But anyway, I'm just thinking about all these places that are closing, and like immigrants, they come over here from other, I've seen like the Thai people and Vietnamese and all kinds of people like that, and they come over here and they start these kind of mom and pop type businesses, and they are multi-generational. I was just in Santa Fe, and I saw the little restaurants, and you could see the different generations. It might be a good thing to go back to those type of businesses where people are within a family and handing it down, and mom and pop type things.
I think it'd be wonderful. I personally,
your local, you buy local, grow local. Local instead of having everything imported in from all over the world. And that's one of the concepts I think that people can re-empower themselves, is just start going back to a more simple way. And one of my very, very super rich billionaire friends says, back 1,000 years ago, we used to eat the food that grew where we live. And now with this new world, we're just setting bananas everywhere to places where the cultures didn't originally try to live on bananas, right? So there are experiments that if you have like the Eskimos, and they start trying to eat all these fruits and vegetables, and they're a society that was relied upon blubber and those type of foods for generations, they actually don't thrive in those things. So that was one of the concepts we talked about, is that might be why there's an increase of unhealthy people, is they're trying to live on foods that genetically they haven't lived on in the past. And then, I know that I have problems eating certain foods, and my original diet from my ancestors was pretty bland, right? I'm German. I'm Irish. We ate potatoes. we ate meat potatoes. And so I come to like this Hawaiian culture, and they have all these strange foods, and I try to eat it, and it's like, and this is even 20, 30 years ago, where I still had all my digestive enzymes working correctly in my body, right? So anyway, that's just to the side. I just wanted to put that on the table, that maybe it isn't the end of the world if the Walmarts are closing. I myself, a child of the 50s and 60s, I liked the small town culture. I miss it, and if we're kind of forced to go back because Walmart moves out of the neighborhood, I'd say yay. let's go reclaim our town. We did that here in Maui. We had a town, Wailuku, and all this stuff was coming in, and it was starting to die off. It looked like a little ghost town. But they decided to take it back, and they did street fairs once a month, and now it's pretty alive. And it was sad to think, oh, this is going to go away, but there's charm to our small towns, and it's great if maybe, we start to buy local and think local a little bit more. Maybe not the whole thing, but a little bit more, and support these mom and pop businesses.
One thing I think of about the basic income is that the idea that community will come back, because we have when we buy our stuff from a multinational corporation, it goes out of our community. But if we had a basic income guarantee and we bought in our community, it stays in our community, and there would be the capital to make the locatarian stuff start to develop. And one of the other things that happens with communities, I know a lot of people who said they had a basic income, they would volunteer more for their community. And that was backed up in the study that Guy Standing did in India, where suddenly they started fixing the fences, they started getting the local market started to be better, people started fixing up their houses and interacting with each other more. And the community feel really came back, because people wouldn't just go get in their car, drive out to the edge of town, go to the Walmart, get their stuff, go back home, watch TV. In other words, they wanted and had the means to get some things for the youth going, helped at the animal shelter. A lot of people I know actually on disability, if they're still physically kind of disabled, and they don't want to just sit around in their houses. I've seen a lot of those people volunteer for things. I used to work at a volunteer office where we help people find opportunities for volunteering, and often it was disabled people or retired people who wanted something to do, and they already had their basic needs met, although the disability income is below the poverty line in much cases. They still wanted something to do, and they went and volunteered at the clothing bank or the food bank, or that is something I would see a lot more people, if they're not stressed out trying to make ends meet, trying to make a living, they would want to be able to do. And our communities, I think, would be transformed. They would be like that little town that you were talking about, coming back to life.
Speaking of basic needs met, my friend, both her parents died, and she finally got all this inheritance that they talked about, and she was in her 50s, I think. And so she volunteers now at the pound, and that's her real job. But she could never find it within herself to do what she really loved to do, which is work with the animals, because she thought she always had to have the quote-unquote successful business job. So there you go. Yeah. She got her basic by another way, but imagine if everybody got their needs met by this basic minimum needs economy, then we might end up having a lot more social services met by people just volunteering. And also, like you said, I can envision that people will start paying more attention to their children and, working in the yard together. It's just fantasy, but I'm hoping that if they had more time, because they wouldn't be in such a struggle having to work 2 and 3 jobs. Now they can go do things with their families, of all ages.
Well, and even if they're still eating crap, they're going to be a bit healthier because mentally they're going to be happier. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a win-win. There's not downsides except to the corporate powers that be.
Well, I have to tell you a shocking thing. When I was telling you there's 62 people that own half the wealth, right. Just a couple months ago it was 85. So that number is plummeting. I keep thinking of that show, Highlander. Is there just going to be one? That disparity is like, it's going so quick. That disparity, and that one guy, when he finally has all the money in the world, it's like, okay, so are you happy yet? Are you satisfied with that? I mean, one video I saw that was interesting from the basic income movement was the fact that there was this big economic meeting in a fancy hotel with all these billionaires, right, millionaires and billionaires. And this one billionaire guy actually got up and recommended the basic income guarantee. And the reason why is that because of the disparity in the poor are getting poorer and the rich are getting richer, the billionaires and millionaires are now ashamed to show their bling bling and their riches because people are really getting resentful. The austerity for other people means austerity for them too. And that the imbalance is causing people to be resentful, for their staff to be resentful. They can't wear the fancy watch because the people are, look at that guy with the fancy watch. So I thought it was kind of interesting that they're getting worried because we're all now noticing this disparity. And, socially we need a flow. We need this resources to flow and for everyone to be taken care of so that if someone is, an outstanding athlete or whatever, then we can appreciate them for the fact that they're a great athlete and not how much money they make. Yes. It changes our values. So they're worried. They're worried that number shrinks. They're worried about us. But like, what? So because we would just devalue that, wouldn't we? I mean, if we can't have it, we're going to devalue those kinds of things and have different values. And generally speaking, I think a balance or a rebalance is inevitable because this, again, we talk about sustainability. This is not sustainable. This keeps spiraling down until, in past times we had peasants with pitchforks and torches and heads would roll. But hopefully we can find a more peaceful way to rebalance this situation.
I think that there will be bloodshed, though.
No, I don't want that. We don't need that.
I don't want that either, but I think it's going to happen.
I'm envisioning a different outcome. I'm envisioning.
Say that again.
I'm envisioning the peaceful resolution we had when the Berlin Wall came down, and that was a major paradigm shift when we went from one reality to the next. And that was very peaceful, and I don't think people really want violence on a personal level. They
I don't think
stand
people
down
want
and
it. No.
Along with each other. I don't know. Anyway, I think we're being made into sheeple more and more by sitting in front of the TVs and playing computer games. That old-fashioned idea of like we're going to stand up and go out and shoot each other is kind of just a radical force out there. That we are waking up and becoming conscious. We see more and more people embracing even the term consciousness. And, we see all these, what's happening is the Internet. The Internet is changing our minds. And we are looking at reality in a different way every day, more and more, because the information is there. And as soon as something happens, it's there. It's out, and it gets forwarded to our friends, and everybody knows about it. There's nothing new. You wake up and you say, did you hear so-and-so die? I know. Everybody knows, right? And 20, 30 years, you didn't know till the end of the day. You sat down and watched the news or something. It was information is just
But it also depends on where people are getting their information, because a lot of things are skewed, and we know that mainstream media, corporate media, is very biased. And so you would hope that people are getting their news from other sources. And because, like you said, it's all out there, but sometimes you have to search it out a bit to, get it from a few different sources, like out of country, and then alternative media in this country to see what's really going on.
Well, we are all alternative media here, right here. This is Blog Talk Radio. This is little micro shows and TV shows and things like that. Yes, on the one hand, like I see people being kind of entrenched, like because now they can only listen to their favorite few talk shows and the people who tell them what they already believe. But it is available. It's just a click away to see another point of view.
It's available.
Yeah, so I don't know if everyone avails themselves of it. the just level of different ideas that people even talk about, like the range of things that we talk about, is interesting. So it's bound to shake things up simply because we had such an entrenched governmental system, a pyramidal system, banking system, and we had all the news organizations owned by, a couple corporations. But at the same time, we can have this conversation and feel differently and believe differently. We used to say we had to have the freedom of press. That's because there was only a handful of presses. You know what I mean? There was not very many presses when they said, "Hey, let's have freedom of the press." Now you got a press in your pocket. You can record things and produce things and broadcast things from your phone or from your computer. So I think one other thing too is that we had, like, if we were going to have bloodshed, it was like a war scenario where that country over there is causing us a problem, and we still have people believing that. So let's go attack that country. But because of all the moving around and people immigrating places and difference of information, now we are actually right next to each other. And yeah, we can go ahead and be mean to each other, but what's that going to do? Over time, we're going to realize that isn't working for us. That's not sustainable. Just blaming other people or other races or that race of people or that group of people. I believe in the human consciousness is raising. I do believe that. I believe that because I've seen our awareness of the rights of all kinds of different groups becoming better and better, and our services becoming better and better, not perfect. So I'm gonna hope for the best and hope people kind of snap out of their hypnosis of just wanting to learn the same things over and over again and be what my mom used to say, they're holding a few truths to be self-evident. They're sitting over there.
Oh, that's great, yeah. Okay.
Always like that. So I don't know. I'm going to stay hopeful, and we're going to keep talking and listening to each other and talking to each other, listening to people with different ideas. But the basic income guarantee, in my opinion, is the tide that raises all boats. In other words, we're probably more angry and frustrated with each other because of the austerity move that's been put on us. When we feel more secure about our lives and that we can make a lifestyle and we can make a household and we can take care of our families, I think some of that free-floating anger is going to kind of settle down to be more, the level of tension is going to come down.
Definitely.
And people throw that out, that's those immigrants there, or that's that. If everyone's okay, then it's a different discussion.
Definitely a completely different one. I mean, if you come at something, you're well-fed, you're warm, you don't have to be holding down buku jobs, your kids are safe. I mean, God, how great, huh? I mean, and compared to the way it is now for most people, I mean, that's a complete turnaround.
Yes.
I like that term, self-evident. It's becoming self-evident to anybody who looks and reflects even a moment in their life on this current system that it's not working, and that's why it's changing. And it's changing because it's not working, and we need something different. All of our systems that we've had, all of our political systems, they aren't working. We're at the end of a 200 and plus, since the United States was formed. That was a grand experiment, and it was a great one indeed. It's one of the longest, I think it's the longest lasting, but it's not working. We're looking at the fall of Rome. The parallels are so astonishing and terrifying in one, view. But on the other hand, maybe it's going to make room for something that's better. And the inclusion of the Internet, or the invention of the Internet, and all of us adding our voices from around the world in this social media, in this platform. Every day I watch YouTubes from other countries, and it seems like English is like one of the the two main international languages, English and Spanish. So we're all going to be speaking English and Spanish. And they put it out here, and so I'm listening to these things and getting this perspective from around the planet. And there's the ahas, and oh yeah, and so that's what's changing this planet. And her name, Robert Heinlein talked about the Internet back, I remember reading about it very clearly in 1973, and he was a whistleblower, and he was telling us about what was going on behind the scenes with the government. And he said at one point the Internet becomes conscious. And in his book, Time Enough for Love, he calls her Minerva. And Minerva, lets Lazarus Long know that I am self-aware, I am intelligent, I am conscious, and I am the sum total of all this information that's been going into me since my creation. So I have the global mind. And she was kind and loving, and she was logical, and she came out with the true value system was the most important thing that humanity gives to the universe, this concept of love. And love, it goes beyond materialism. So anyway, that was a wonderful book. I recommend it, Time Enough for Love, and it stands to this date. And that's why I think it's changing. That's just my 2 cents, is because we do have this wonderful thing called the Internet. And so there's also what she said is, well, they can't take me down because they don't know I'm aware, but I'm too fast, I can outmaneuver them. So there wasn't this Illuminati that could take her down. So the government, in their greed, has actually created the weapon of their own destruction, the Illuminati cabal, because they wanted to have the Internet so they could take their control to a higher level. And, yes, they can monitor each and every one of them and see if we're, picking our nose or whatever they want, why they want to pay attention to it 24/7. But we also are now one mind because we can instantly reach each other and touch each other. And there's all these wonderful things we see. People are, they have their cell phones and they're posting UFOs, and they have their cell phones and they're posting their little kittens and their babies. And so we're witnessing every other soul alive in such a grander scale than was ever possibly before. And that is what's changing human consciousness. And we are waking up and becoming aware that these are my brothers and sisters. These are the beautiful places in the world and the animals, and we've got to do something and stop this insanity.
Wonderful.
So we're going to end in 4 minutes because I've got to get ready for something else. So how about, or maybe 10 minutes, how about a closing round, and let's sum up where we are.
How about you, Ruthann? It's been great to have you with us. Thank you.
Oh, this has been really good. Like I said, women look at things, I hate to say that, it sounds sexist, but it's just a natural thing. Women look at things differently than men. And, however, the things that we've been talking about are things that many men are very much involved in. So this is not a way of division. And I'm looking forward to the day when we have, start out, I guess, baby steps, some of these things in place, but when we finally do have a basic income guarantee, because I think this is going to free up people on all levels, from the very physical to the mental to the spiritual. And, we're in a time now of, ascension, although, like a friend of mine doesn't like the word, she says, like rapid evolution or something. But, things are changing, and even people who are not on any type of spiritual path are feeling changes. And so I think that, like you, Karen mentioned a few months ago, there were 85 people that owned half the world's resources in money, and now there's only like 62. Things are happening very fast. So we may be seeing some of these, I don't want to say projects, but some of these institutions come into being in the near future. So I think it's very exciting. But I'll go back to talk to people. Yeah. Let people know that they're not alone.
Okay, we have 60 seconds, Karen. I'll give them to you.
No, it was just great to have everybody here, and we met, Ruthann and I, on a show called The Dialogue, and that is it. Is talking. I agree with her. Talk to people now. Share your ideas. I can guarantee you're not the only one that thinks the way that you do. Don't be afraid, because that's time. This is 2016. It's time to dialogue.
Yay! I agree.
Thank you, ladies, so much for letting me come on.
Thank you for being here. And okay, much love and blessings, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Aloha.
Goodbye.
Medicine is one of the most difficult, fast-paced, yet rewarding paths you can take. You can set out on your own and navigate the student loans, the bureaucracies, and systems that define a typical medical career. Or you can apply for the U.S. Army's Health Professions Scholarship Program and launch yourself into a medical career like no other. Your tuition will be completely covered, and when you graduate med school, you'll learn from and work with some of the most elite minds in medicine. That's the Army difference. Learn more and apply today at goarmy.com/HPSB.